This happened 4 years ago. There were three of us, me, Arman, and Naeem. We had planned a short trip to a hilly area in the northern part of the country. It was supposed to be a simple break from work and daily life. We packed light, filled the car with fuel, and left early in the morning, expecting to reach our destination before sunset. Things didn't go according to plan. Traffic delays, road construction, and a wrong turn cost us several hours. By the time we realized how late it was, the sun was already setting. The road we were on had grown narrower, and there were no houses or shops in sight. Trees stood close to both sides of the road, blocking most of the remaining light. We discussed turning back, but our phones had poor signal, and the map showed the destination was closer if we kept going. So we decided to continue. Night fell quickly. The road became unusually quiet. No other cars passed us, and even the usual sounds of insects seemed missing. Our headlights cut through the darkness, showing long stretches of empty asphalt and thick forest on both sides. About 30 minutes later, Armand pointed out something strange. The road signs had stopped appearing. We hadn't seen a single signboard for a long time. No directions, no warnings, nothing. It felt like we were driving through a place that had been forgotten. Then the radio started acting up. It switched from music to static on its own. Armand tried changing the channel, but every station sounded the same, crackling noise mixed with faint, unclear voices. We turned it off, and the silence inside the car became heavy. That was when we saw her. A woman stood on the side of the road, barely visible in the headlights. She was wearing a light-colored dress and standing completely still. Her hair covered most of her face. She didn't wave or move, just stood there, facing the road. Naeem slowed the car. My first thought was that she might be someone who needed help, but something about her felt wrong. There were no houses around, and it was far too late for someone to be standing alone in that area. As we got closer, she slowly lifted her head. Her face looked pale, almost gray, and her eyes reflected the headlights in a way that didn't feel normal. She opened her mouth slightly, but no sound came out. "Don't stop," I said. Naeem hesitated, then pressed the accelerator. As the car passed her, I looked back through the rear window. She was gone. No footsteps, no movement into the forest. She simply wasn't there anymore. None of us spoke for several minutes. We tried to make sense of it, telling ourselves she must have moved quickly or that the darkness was playing tricks on our eyes. Then the road changed. The smooth asphalt turned uneven, full of cracks and patches. The car started shaking slightly as we drove. The headlights began flickering, dimming for a second and then returning to normal. That's when we noticed something terrifying. We were passing the same broken milestone again. It was a short concrete post on the left side of the road, cracked at the top with faded writing on it. We remembered it because it looked unusual, but now we were seeing it again and again. No matter how long we drove, the same stretch of road kept repeating. The same curve, the same trees, the same broken milestone. Panic slowly started to settle in. Naeem checked the fuel gauge. It was dropping faster than it should have been. Arman tried calling someone, but his phone showed no signal at all. Then we heard knocking. 3 slow knocks. Not on the door, on the roof of the car. We froze. Another knock followed, heavier this time, like something had leaned its weight down. The car slowed on its own, even though Naeem's foot was still on the accelerator. In the headlights ahead, the woman appeared again. This time she was standing in the middle of the road. Her head was tilted at an unnatural angle, and her arms hung loosely by her sides. She took a single step toward the car, then another. "Reverse," Arman shouted. Naeem shifted gears and pressed down hard. The car jolted backward, the engine struggling. The knocking on the roof turned into dragging sounds as if fingernails were scraping the metal. I shut my eyes and started praying silently. Suddenly, the headlights flared brightly, and the road ahead changed. The trees thinned out, and we saw a signboard in the distance. The knocking stopped. When we opened our eyes fully, the woman was gone. The car stalled for a moment. Then the engine roared back to life. Naeem didn't slow down this time. He drove straight toward the signboard. It showed the name of a nearby town. We reached a small roadside shop a few minutes later, its lights glowing like a safe haven. We parked the car and got out, shaking. The shop owner looked at us strangely and asked where we were coming from. When we told him the road name, his face changed. He said people avoided that road at night. There were stories of accidents and a woman who died there many years ago. Drivers reported losing their way, seeing things, and hearing knocks on their cars. We didn't stay long. We changed our route and reached our destination the next morning, exhausted, but safe. Even now, none of us drive at night on unfamiliar roads without thinking about that trip. We escaped with our lives and our car, but something stayed behind on that road, and I believe it's still waiting for someone to stop. My name is Farzana, and what I am about to share happened during a short trip I took with my boyfriend. This happened 2 years ago. My boyfriend Rahim loved fishing. It helped him relax. He often talked about camping near the sea, cooking freshly caught fish over a campfire, and spending a quiet night under the open sky. I agreed to go with him because I trusted him, and I also wanted a break from the noise of the city. We chose a quiet beach far from tourist areas. There were no hotels nearby, no streetlights, and no crowds, just sand, sea, and trees. We arrived in the afternoon and spent the early evening setting up a small tent, collecting firewood and preparing fishing lines. As night fell, the place became very quiet. The waves sounded heavier than usual, hitting the shore slowly and repeatedly. The wind was mild and the sky was clear. Rahim went fishing while I stayed near the campfire, organizing things and watching the flames. He returned after about an hour with several fish. They were fresh and large. He was excited and placed them in a bucket near the fire. We planned to cook them one by one. That was when I noticed something strange. The beach felt too empty. No birds, no insects, no distant human sounds. Even the waves felt quieter, as if the sea itself was holding its breath. I mentioned this to Rahim, but he laughed and said I was overthinking. We cooked the first fish and ate quietly. The fire crackled softly. Everything felt normal again, or at least I tried to convince myself of that. Then Rahim stood up and frowned. One of the fish was missing from the bucket. At first, we thought maybe an animal had taken it. Dogs sometimes wandered near beaches. Rahim shrugged and said it was no big deal. He added more wood to the fire and went back to checking the fishing line he had left in the water. A few minutes later, I heard a sound near the shoreline. It wasn't loud, it sounded wet, like something dragging itself across the sand. I stood up and looked toward the water, but the darkness made it hard to see clearly. I told myself it was probably a crab or a wave pulling something back into the sea. Then another fish disappeared. This time I was watching the bucket. I didn't see anything take it. One moment it was there, and the next moment it was gone. No movement, no sound, nothing. My heart started beating faster. I called Rahim back and told him what happened. He looked confused but still tried to stay calm. He said maybe the bucket had tipped over, but it hadn't. It was standing upright. That's when we heard chewing. It came from the darkness, close to the waterline. Slow, wet chewing sounds like raw flesh being torn apart. Rahim picked up a flashlight and pointed it toward the sound. What we saw still haunts me. Something was crouched near the water. It wasn't fully human, but it wasn't an animal either. Its body looked thin and bent, with long arms that touched the ground. Its skin looked pale and slick, reflecting the flashlight like wet sand. It was eating the fish. It didn't look at us at first. It focused only on the food, biting and tearing with sharp movements. I noticed its fingers were too long, and its nails curved inward like hooks. Rahim whispered my name. I couldn't speak. My mouth felt dry, and my legs felt weak. The creature suddenly stopped chewing. Slowly, it turned its head toward us. Its eyes were dark and deep, not reflecting light like normal eyes. Its mouth opened slightly, and I saw rows of small, uneven teeth. It made a low sound, not a growl, but something closer to hunger. That's when I remembered something my grandmother once told me. Macho passage, a creature that lives near water, feeding on fish, sometimes drawn by fire and human presence. I never believed those stories. I thought they were meant to scare children, but that thing in front of us matched every description. Rahim slowly stepped back and whispered that we should leave everything and go. He didn't shout, he didn't run. He knew sudden movements might provoke it. The creature stood up. It was taller than I expected. Its movements were slow but unnatural, like its joints bent the wrong way. It took one step toward us, dragging one leg slightly. The fire suddenly flickered hard, as if a strong wind had blown through, even though the air was still. That was enough. Raheem grabbed my hand and we ran toward the car. Behind us, I heard something moving fast across the sand. Not running, but sliding and dragging. We didn't look back. When we reached the car, Raheem fumbled with the keys, his hands shaking. I turned around for just a second. The creature stood near the campfire. It didn't chase us further. It crouched again and started eating the remaining fish while completely ignoring us now. The firelight revealed its thin body and hollow face as it fed. Raheem started the car, and we drove away as fast as we could. Neither of us spoke during the drive. We didn't stop until we reached a busy road with lights and people. We never went back to that beach. We didn't report anything. What would we even say? Even now, when I smell raw fish or hear waves late at night, my chest tightens. I don't tell many people this story. Most wouldn't believe me. But I know what I saw, and I know that some creatures don't want humans. They only want what the sea provides. This happened in late September, about 6 years ago. We were a group of 5 friends from the Pacific Northwest. I was 29 at the time. The others were Mark, his younger brother Ethan, a guy named Lucas, and our captain, Robert Miller. Robert was older than us, in his late 40s, and had been fishing these waters most of his life. If anyone understood the sea, it was him. We weren't doing anything extreme. It was a simple fishing trip, about 40 miles off the coast. The plan was to stay 2 nights on Robert's trawler, fish during the day, and head back before the weather turned. The forecast was clear. No storms, no warnings. The first day went exactly as expected. Calm water, good catch, normal conversations. We anchored before sunset and ate on deck. The ocean was flat and dark, stretching endlessly in every direction. Robert mentioned how quiet it was, even for that area. He said it casually, not like a warning. That night, I woke up around 2 a.m. I remember because I checked my watch. The boat wasn't rocking. It felt like we were floating in still water, which is unusual that far out. What woke me wasn't a sound, it was the feeling that something had changed. I stepped onto the deck to get air. The sky was clear, full of stars, but the sea looked wrong. It wasn't reflecting the sky, it looked darker, thicker somehow, like black oil. I leaned over the railing and listened. No waves, no water movement, just silence. Then I heard something behind me. It sounded like someone walking barefoot on wet wood. Slow steps. I turned expecting one of the guys, but the deck was empty. The sound stopped the moment I looked. I stood there for a full minute before going back inside. I didn't mention it the next morning because I didn't want to be that guy blaming tiredness or imagination. By midday, things started getting strange for everyone. The sonar began picking up large shapes beneath us. Not fish, not whales, just long, stretched forms that didn't move normally. They would appear for a few seconds, then vanish. Robert checked the equipment twice and said it was functioning correctly. Ethan joked about sea monsters. Robert didn't laugh. Around late afternoon, the radio started acting up. We were picking up voices that didn't belong to any channel. Not static, not distortion. Actual voices, overlapping, low, and distant. You couldn't make out words, but you could tell they were human. Lucas asked if it could be another boat. Robert shook his head and said the signal direction didn't make sense. It sounded like it was coming from below us. We turned the radio off after that. That evening, the fog rolled in without warning. One moment, the horizon was clear, and the next, it was gone. Thick gray fog wrapped around the boat so tightly that you couldn't see 10 feet ahead. The GPS still worked, but the compass began spinning slowly, like it couldn't settle. Robert said we'd ride it out until morning. That night, none of us slept properly. Sometime after midnight, Mark started shouting. We rushed to the deck and found him pointing over the side. He kept saying someone was in the water. He was sure of it. Said he saw a man floating face up, eyes open, staring at the boat. We shined flashlights into the fog and saw nothing. Mark swore the man smiled at him before sinking. About an hour later, the boat began drifting, splitting. The engine wouldn't start. Not broken, just unresponsive, like it wasn't connected anymore. Robert tried everything. Nothing worked. Then we felt it. A slow, heavy pressure beneath the boat. Not an impact. More like something passing under us, close enough that the deck vibrated. The water around us rippled outward in a perfect circle. Ethan started crying quietly. Lucas kept asking what it was. Robert didn't answer. That's when the knocking began. It came from below deck. 3 slow knocks, then a pause, then 3 more. Not metal on metal, it sounded like knuckles on wood. Robert grabbed a flashlight and went down first. The rest of us followed. The knocking moved as we moved, always below us, always just out of sight. When we reached the lowest section of the boat, the knocking stopped. We stood there in silence. Then we heard breathing. It wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive. It sounded tired, deep and steady, like someone who had been underwater too long and was finally resting. The sound came from beneath the hull. We went back up without saying a word. The fog didn't lift until just before dawn. When it did, the sea looked normal again. The engine started immediately, like nothing had happened. The sonar showed nothing unusual. The radio was silent. No one suggested continuing the trip. On the way back, Robert finally spoke. He said there were old stories among fishermen about certain parts of the ocean, places where things didn't sink the way they should, places that remembered people. He said you don't go looking for answers out there, because the sea doesn't explain itself. We made it back safely. No one reported anything officially. There was nothing to report. But here's the reason I'm writing this now. 3 months after that trip, Ethan drowned. Calm lake, strong swimmer, no witnesses. They said it was an accident. A year later, Lucas disappeared while sailing alone. His boat was found drifting, engine running, radio on. Mark refuses to go near open water. He still wakes up screaming about a man smiling up at him from below. As for me, I hear knocking sometimes when I'm half asleep. 3 slow knocks, always the same rhythm.
Alright guys, the horror ends here for tonight. There will be more terrifying experiences on this channel, so don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Share it with your horror nerd friends. If you've experienced something paranormal, you can email your story to the address in the description. See you in the next video. Stay safe until then, if you can.